Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentlewoman from North Carolina for yielding me the customary 30 minutes, and I yield such time as I may consume.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, before I get into my statement, I just, for the record, would like to point out to the gentlelady that, you know, in response to her very political and partisan remarks, I want to remind her that George Bush came into office in 2000. Republicans were in charge of both the House and the Senate until 2006. And so if you want to point fingers at why this economy is in a ditch, I would suggest that my Republican friends look in the mirror. Mr. Speaker, budgets are moral documents. Budgets lay out our priorities, document what we think is important for our country to succeed and our citizens to thrive. A few months ago, this Republican-controlled House made a statement by passing the Ryan budget. With that vote, House Republicans showed that they want to end Medicare as we know it, but their budget did more than just undermine Medicare. It set the stage for the appropriations process. So here we are today to begin consideration of the FY 2012 Agriculture Appropriations Bill. This bill, while not as high profile as some others, is one I believe to be of critical importance to our nation and to the world. It funds many of the programs that keep our nation and many parts of the world from going hungry. It deals with the most helpless people, the most vulnerable people in our country and in the world. It protects the food supply so that our children and families don't have to worry about contaminated food. And it provides important funds for rural America, including critical funds for broadband internet access and other rural development programs. Mr. Speaker, this bill is important in many, many ways. But like the Ryan budget, the FY 2012 Agriculture Appropriations Bill, as written by the Republicans, is just plain wrong. This allocation is unworkable. Frankly, I don't care if you have an open rule or a super-duper open rule or a quadruple bypass rule. It doesn't make any difference, because this bill, as written, is unfixable. The only way to help programs that they cut that feed hungry people is to cut from other programs that feed hungry people. So there is no way to make this bill better. And the bill as written, Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, is morally indefensible. Instead of making investments in our nation's agriculture and anti-hunger programs, this bill slashes funds for WIC, CSFP, TFAP, PL480, and the food safety programs. And those aren't just meaningless acronyms. WIC is the Women, Infant, and Children's Program. Funds from WIC provide food and nutrition education to pregnant women, newborn children, and kids up to 5 years of age. CSFP is the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, and it helps put food on the tables of America's senior citizens. TFAP is the Emergency Food Assistance Program, and it provides assistance to food banks that are struggling with decreased donations and increased demand during these difficult times. PL480 is the program that helps provide American-grown food to hungry and impoverished people in developing nations around the world. It's known as Food for Peace. And the food safety programs protect our citizens from foodborne bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella. Taken together, cuts in domestic anti-hunger programs total more than $500 million. Add in the cuts to PL 480 and the McGovern-Dole school feeding program, and the cuts add up to well over $1 billion to programs, again, that provide food to hungry people here at home and around the world. Mr. Speaker, as written, this is a pro-hunger bill. There is no other way to say it. And no matter what anyone says, this bill will increase hunger here at home and around the world. A vote for this bill is a vote to willfully allow people in America and around the world to go without food. A vote for this bill is to take food from children and seniors, to allow food banks to open with half full and empty shelves. These aren't just freezes in current spending. A freeze in current spending would be bad enough with the continued rising demand and rising food prices that people are facing here at home and around the world. So that would be bad enough. No, these are real cuts that will do real damage to real people. The only thing crueler than ignoring a hungry person is giving a hungry person food and then taking it away. No one would condone that, Mr. Speaker, and yet that's what this bill does. And we're not just talking about that tired old stereotype of the welfare queen gaming a system. No, Mr. Speaker, the bill we're talking about are people who played by the rules but are struggling to make ends meet because of the difficult economy. We are seeing more middle-income families who are now turning to food banks and food pantries. In times of need, we're supposed to help our brothers and sisters in need. You know, that's what a community is about. That's what our country is supposed to be about. Yet this bill does not do that. Instead, it cruelly targets those who are hurting at no fault of their own. Yes, we are facing tough, difficult economic times. Yes, we need to address the budget deficit. But what kind of nation are we if we choose to balance our deficit on the backs of the poor and the hungry? What kind of Congress are we if we choose to cut the programs that protect our seniors and our children in favor of protecting gas, oil, and farm subsidies? Because I want my colleagues to understand that those subsidies to those examples of corporate welfare are all protected, and they've been protected by this new majority since they took office. What kind of people are we if we stand idly by and allow our children to go hungry? Nations to go to war over food riots. We all watched with great interest what unfolded in Egypt, with the protests demanding democracy and freedom. But they were also demanding food. They were also riding over the lack of food that people had in Egypt. Mr. Speaker, this would be especially tragic because it kind of demonstrates where the new majority's priorities are. One of the first things that they insisted on was that we protect the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest people in this country. Donald Trump got his tax cut protected, and we didn't have to offset that, even though it's costing a great deal to our deficit and our debt. We didn't offset it. They just wanted to protect it. All the corporate welfare, all protected. And so now they bring a bill to the floor, and they say, well, we have to make tough choices. We have to make tough decisions. And the tough decisions, the tough choices they make are they cut the WIC program. 300,000 people will be thrown off a WIC. That's not tough on anybody here in the United States House of Representatives. We're all fine. But it's tough on a lot of low-income pregnant mothers and their children all around this country. We can do better than that, and Congress needs to do better than that, and this nation should be better than that. This bill follows in the grand tradition of the Ryan budget. Like the Ryan budget, it does great damage to the American people. And like the Ryan budget, it breaks our nation's great promise to protect our nation's citizens. And like the Ryan budget, in my opinion, this is morally indefensible. I urge my colleagues to join me in opposing this bill. I urge my Republican colleagues, don't do this. Don't do this. Don't try to balance the budget on the backs of the most helpless people in our country and around the world. I reserve the balance of my time.